Hello, this is Shane McIntyre doing the Week 4 Video Observation Journal 2. This week we had to take a look at some evidence-based practices, and we had to think about which ones we were familiar with, unfamiliar with, and which ones we wanted to investigate further. When I first started looking at evidence-based practices, I mean, quite honestly, this is my 16th year as a teacher, and I didn't quite realize that a lot of the stuff that I've done in the past and I'm doing currently was an evidence-based practice. When we first started looking at them, I think it was in 675. I didn't think I was that familiar with them. There was just a couple of them that I pointed out that I knew what was going on with them. But as I was going through the IRIS module this week and taking a much closer look at each one of them, I realized I done quite a few of them in the past. A lot of them I'd done while I was working at a non-public school. I taught there for 5 years with emotionally disturbed students. And so we did a lot of modeling, social narratives, social skill training, reinforcement. We did a lot of that type of teaching. We also did a lot of antecedent-based interventions. We would have, ABC sheets, the antecedent, behavior, consequence sheets. Everything we did was all about behavior. That was our sole focus. Well, I can't say sole focus. It sure felt like it. 75% of everything we do is behavior, just trying to get them back to the public schools. And so we did a lot of that. And then the other reason that I'm quite familiar with a lot of these is that, as I've mentioned in the past, my youngest son has autism, and we do ABA therapy in the home 5 days a week. And so I've been able to experience a lot of these EBPs through that, like discrete trial teaching, things like extinction. They've done a functional behavior assessment on him. Initially, when we first started, we did a little bit with PECS. We also did a little bit with PECS when we were doing some speech therapy when he was really young, before he was able to start grasping language. And doing better with that. And then we've done a lot of social skills training, structured play groups, things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with at least half of the EBPs, surprisingly. Ones I'm not familiar with: cognitive behavioral intervention, differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, time delay, video recording. The concept sounds very similar to modeling. It's that we're just doing it through video recordings, but I haven't done that. I don't have any experience with that. Pivotal response training, naturalistic intervention. The ones that I'm really interested in, that really kind of piqued my curiosity: parent implemented intervention, peer mediated instruction, and then task analysis. And I've got to be honest, my reasons for being interested in them is kind of selfish. In the classroom, I have very few kiddos on the spectrum. I've got 3 with autism, and I've got 1 really high functioning Asperger's kid. So my interest in these EBPs is really for my son. The parent implemented intervention, because right now a lot of what we do is all directed by our therapist through ABA, which is great. But I'm interested in, kind of how the transition goes to as we start to wean our way off of the therapist and then more onto my wife and I taking over the interventions with our son, so we can continue on, through however long we need to do these things. And the other one, peer-mediated instruction. He's got 4 brothers and sisters at home, and so there's plenty of opportunity to have, the peers involved with everything going on with my youngest. And I definitely think that there's an opportunity for him to learn by observing. I mean, I know he learns by observing because we see it all the time. But, them modeling the correct behaviors, the correct responses, the correct way to get attention, all of those kinds of things. I definitely think that that's something that I'd like to explore more in the future. And then the other thing that we took a look at through the IRIS module was the phases of autism. it was very interesting to stop and take a look at what the parents are going through at all different stages of their kids' lives. Talking about the first one, when the child, he's only a couple years old and super young, and first trying to get things diagnosed and get things started. Going on to, the boy at the end who was in his teens, and they've been doing this for a long time, and where they're at. It was very interesting. I feel like I've got a connection with them. I mean, obviously, again, because I kind of play both sides here. I've got a student who's special needs, so I understand where the parents are coming from: fears, anxieties, hopes, concerns, going into an IEP meeting, dealing with a teacher. And then I've got the advantage of also being a teacher in the classroom, so I can see things from both sides. Usually it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because, when we're talking to the teacher and they'll tell us certain things, and then in the back of my mind I'm going, yeah, I really know what you're thinking because it's the same stuff that I do with my parents. But I really appreciated listening to, especially the parents of older kids, since mine is young, and we've only been dealing with autism now for coming up on 2 years. Seeing someone who's been doing this for a long time and seeing their experience and it gives hope, and it shows you that there is definitely a future, a bright future. Something in the reading on Faces of Autism that I really liked was that it's so key for the teacher to build positive relationships with families. It's easy as a teacher, especially myself, I teach high school. So I only have a kid in the classroom for 55 minutes. They're in, they're out. And we make connections with some of them, and those are the ones that come in passing period or before school, after school, at lunch. We spend a lot of time with them, but honestly, for the majority of my students, I see them for less than an hour a day. And it's easy to just kind of gloss over the fact that there's so much more to them than just that student sitting here that I'm trying to teach government to. And it's really key is to have the relationship with the families. So when I do have to pick up the phone and say, hey, we've got this issue or that issue, that there isn't any questioning, hey, where's this teacher coming from? Do they have my child's best interest in mind? Because we've got the relationship. And then when the parent realizes that you care, the trust opens up, the honesty opens up, and the entire thing is just such a better experience. And then the other thing that I read in there that I just thought was key is that child's learning is a shared responsibility with families. That it's both sides of the coin. You've got it from the teacher, but you have to have the family supporting what the teacher's doing. But the flip side too, the teacher has to support what the family's doing, and then together, it's a good experience. Learning happens, and behavior learning happens, and it's the best thing for the student, it's the best thing for the family, it's the best thing for the teacher. It's a win all around. So, yeah, it was a really interesting week. I enjoyed the things that we learned about, especially, looking into some of those maybe EBPs for the future that I might be able to use in the classroom, but also at home with my son. And so, looking forward to what we're about to learn next. So, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye.